Good afternoon, everyone. Join us today to learn a little more about the entrepreneurial spirit from someone who's an entrepreneur himself. Let me introduce to you a very special guest. This is Mr. Micheal Kelly.
Hello, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yep.
Appreciate the invite.
And so, Mr. Micheal Kelly, for those who may not know you as much, can you give a little bit of a gist about who you are and what your origin story is?
Yeah, sure. I'm actually a UT Dallas alumni, so it's good to be back here on campus.
Very interesting.
I had a really kind of weird journey and story. I originally went to UTSA, dropped out of college, built a career. I ended up working at JP Morgan for 12 years. Before that, I had a couple of companies. While I was at JP Morgan, I had multiple companies. And then I went back to school while I was working at JP Morgan. So I came to night school here at UT Dallas and on the weekends, and then graduated in 2020, spring of 2020, right when COVID hit. So that was an interesting experience.
Yeah.
And then I left JP Morgan in 2021 to start my current company, Resolute Future.
Wow. Very interesting. So you did mention that you were at JP Morgan multiple times. I noticed that you were actually able to become the vice president of investments, also working with around $120 million in funds, right? Mm-hmm. What inspired you to drop out from such a stable, I'm assuming well-paying job to go back into education and then go into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, as we go through life, there's certain things that become really interesting, really kind of drives our passions, right? And entrepreneurship is something that drives my passion, and more importantly, the need for entrepreneurship in the world. And so, I was doing really well at JP Morgan. I had a lot of wonderful clients, I had a lot of wonderful relationships, but I did feel like the impact that I was having there was not as large as I could have if I was doing something else. And so that's really kind of what drove the decision making for me. And took about 5 years actually from when I decided I wanted to leave to do something that I'm really passionate about. I kind of had an idea of what that was, but really wanted to formulate what those ideas looked like before I made that move, because it is hard and difficult to leave a job like that.
Yeah.
And finally culminated to me making that jump.
Nice. One more question. So you did mention how hard it is to make that switch. How do you find the right time to make that switch, or how do you know when it's a good idea to make that big jump?
Yeah, so this is actually, really a life thing more than a career thing, because in life we have a lot of really tough decisions to make, and it's never the right time, right? Like if you ask my wife, when would the right time be to have kids? The answer is always, next year, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes when I was at JP Morgan, I would do a lot of financial planning with people, and you hear, I plan on buying a house in the next 5 years. And 3 years later, the answer is, in the next 5 years, right? And it's always difficult to make change in your life. And so there's never really going to be a perfect time. It's really about when is the best time you can do it, right, versus the worst time. And so you have to really look and understand all the components that go into the decision that you're making. So, for example, it's really difficult to get a mortgage if you're an entrepreneur. And so if I was planning on buying a house in the next year, then I shouldn't leave JP Morgan, right? I should stay there so I can get qualified for a mortgage and all of that fun stuff. So different things like that come into play when you're making a decision like that. But ultimately, at some point you just have to make the jump. At the end of the day, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear, and so you can't hold yourself back from making those tough decisions.
So another question. So while you were at JP Morgan, you mentioned you started a few companies, right? How did that experience really help you grow as an entrepreneur now?
Yeah, so, a couple of different ways. It really shaped everything that I do, right? It really shaped the knowledge that I have, the experiences that I have, both at JP Morgan and when starting companies, right? So first thing is, whenever you're trying to go through life and figure out what you want to do and learn as much as you can, you want to get exposed to as many things as you can. But something that's really important that people don't tell you is, as soon as you realize something's not for you, you should set it down, right? So for example, I don't know if you like to read books.
I do.
Okay, so one of the best advice I could give somebody is read a lot of books, don't finish very many of them. Okay. And the reason for that is when you start digging into a book, the moment you're like, this is an okay book, people still finish it. Mm-hmm. That's a waste of your time. You're better off getting exposed to another idea that might capture your imagination, right? And so whenever you're reading books, you should really search for the ones that you can't wait until you read the next page. Right? Mm-hmm. And now to take that metaphor outside of books, you should do the same thing in life, right? Mm-hmm. Get exposed to as many experiences as you can, especially if the experiences are a little scary for you. Okay. And find things that, you can't wait to get to the next page, right? And the more times that you can put yourself in that situation, the more you're going to learn, because then you're really going to have that, intrinsic motivation to just dig in and understand those concepts. And then, the more concepts you're exposed to, the more you're able to actually do and focus your attention on something that you're really passionate about. And so my time at JP Morgan really allowed me to do that because, not only did my job there require me to do a lot of different things, but, starting multiple businesses were ways that I can, itch my entrepreneurial spirit, but also B, get exposed to different things, because I started businesses in different realms. So yeah, it was really a lot of that. Now, my experience at JP Morgan, I was a fiduciary of other people's money. Okay. And so, being able to make tough decisions and own the outcomes of those decisions was really important. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest thing I learned from JP Morgan that really kind of carries forward and always will is the ability to make decisions in uncertain environments, right? Okay. So, the stock market, for example, it's always uncertain what direction it's going to go, but you still have to figure out how to make a decision and how to stand by that decision until it's time to pivot, right? And so it really helped me with that and becoming really comfortable in operating in risk and understanding risk. There's a difference from, blinding yourself from risk and just doing things and understanding the risk and doing it anyways. So I think those were some of the biggest lessons that I learned.